we want earlier reminders. We want also like help prepping for the challenge. There were organizations that wanted to bring youth, but didn't know all the logistics, didn't know if there was programming for youth before the legislative visits. There's orgs that wanted to bring parents that ask us for support. There's also orgs that didn't think they could come because of the way they're funded. They thought, well, we're not allowed to lobby. Can we still go? And so, spoiler alert, you can attend the challenge even if you're not allowed to lobby. And we have a workshop coming down the pike that will just help demystify all that. But we have 8 webinars between now and May of next year focused on different aspects of the challenge. The ones between now and March are about prepping for the challenge. If you want to bring youth, if you want to bring parents, if you or someone you know is a first-time participant with the challenge, we'll talk about what that entails. If any of you want to be legislative team leaders, we'll have an info session to break that down. What does it mean to lead a delegation and lead a team of people to talk to your state senator, your assembly member? So the website, if you go to calsec.org and then click on advocacy and the after school challenge, you can see the list of webinars that we're offering. You can also see a link to register. And all of these sessions will also be recorded. So if you really want to attend one of them, but you can't make it, you have a scheduling conflict, just hit us up and we'll send you the recording. We'll be posting them on our website as well. And then all of you who are attending, you'll get a copy of the recording as well, so you can share it with your colleagues if there were any of your peers that couldn't make it today. But again, thank you for coming. We're very excited. We hope that this session is helpful and informative. And now I'm going to turn it over to our co-facilitators, Ben and Leslye.
Awesome. Thanks, Sly. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome. So glad to join you all and have you in the room for our kickoff event for the Challenge webinar series. With my co-host, Leslye. I am Ben Nash with the Partnership for Children and Youth. And this is the kickoff event, the kickoff webinar for the Challenge webinar series hosted by CalSec. Super excited to have you all join. And today we're going to talk about how to invite and successfully host a legislator at your site visit. So if folks have done that before and are just looking for additional tips or want to do it again and build on what they already did, or if you've never done it before, welcome. This is the space for you. Before I pass it to Leslye to do our check-in activity, want to get a sense from folks of who has and hasn't actually hosted a site visit before, specifically hosted a legislator at their site visit before. So we're going to run this quick poll really quick. My colleague Myosha is going to run it for us, I believe, and just let us know, yes or no, you've invited and hosted a legislator at your site visit before, or you haven't. Just so we can get a sense of where folks are at coming in today. Cool. So I see the results coming in. Looks like most folks have not hosted a legislator before, but a couple have. So that's exciting. Cool. Got some more results. We'll close it in maybe 10 more seconds. Oh, I think actually we got everyone to respond, so we can go ahead and end that. Great. So you can see here, most folks have not hosted a legislator at their site visit, which is exactly what we want. We're going to talk about that today. So cool. Let's jump into it. I'm going to pass it to Leslye, who's going to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Leslye Lugo with the California AfterSchool Network. Happy to join you all today. Excited to have you. So we want to get a sense of who's in the space today. So I'm going to ask that you all raise your hand if you are a site coordinator or a site lead. Interesting. Okay, so there's no site coordinators? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. I see one hand. Any other site coordinators in the space? Yeah. All right. So we have one site coordinator, maybe another. All right. Thanks for joining us today. All right. So if you are a program leader, if you can go ahead and raise your hand. So you're someone that runs program and you're with young people every day. Awesome. Okay. All right. Welcome. Welcome. Thanks for being here today. All right. I see some more hands. Great. All right. So raise your hand if you are new to expanded learning. So you're new to this field. Okay. All right. Welcome. Welcome. All right. Raise your hand if you currently work with elementary youth. If you're working with the littles. Okay, great. Welcome. Raise your hand if you're currently working with middle or high school students. All right. Okay. Y'all are my people. Thank you for coming. I myself used to work with middle school students back in the day. So I have a special place in my heart for middle school folks. All righty. So thank you all for being here. Really appreciate getting a sense of who's in the space. And we hope that you all take some great lessons today or some information. And I'll pass it on back to Ben.
Cool. Thanks, Leslye. Yeah, exciting to see so many different folks in different roles in the space today. I think that'll make for a good conversation, good questions. I think we have a small enough group to where folks feel free to ask questions in the chat, chime in, and then we'll have some more time at the end to dig into more specifics. But yeah, here's on the screen quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. Leslye is going to lead us through the value of a site visit, right? Why should I have one in the first place? What's the purpose? What's the point of having a site visit, specifically inviting quote unquote VIPs or legislators to a site visit. Then we'll talk about who you should invite. So I know I should have one. I'm excited to have one, but I don't know exactly who from my community should be there. So we'll get into that a little bit. Then we'll talk about timing. When should I invite them? If I'm having a site visit in the fall, like maybe for Lights On After School coming up in October, when's a good time to reach out to folks? Then we'll get into the day of tasks. So you've decided you want to have one. You've planned to host it. The day is here. Now what do I do? What's the day of look like? It can get a little chaotic with everyone running around. So we'll get into that. And then we'll end with some Q&A and then have some closing thoughts for and reflections for everyone. So that's our agenda. And then before we kick it off, just want to ground everyone in a sense of what our goals are. So goal number one, we want to demystify hosting legislators and VIPs at your site. And when I say VIPs, those can be community leaders, school board members, other folks in the local community or statewide. So we'll get into that. But yeah, want to take the veil off of that. Want to make it easy, understandable, and not scary for folks to invite these folks and host them at your site. And then second, we want to find your representative specifically and support you in inviting them to your program this year. So we're going to spend some time actually finding from your specific community, whether you're in Sacramento or I saw someone from Palm Springs or you're here in the Bay Area with me, who are your reps? And then we're going to support you in inviting them. So those are our goals. That's our plan. And let's get started with why should we have a site visit?
All righty. So I'm going to ask maybe one of the four folks that said they had hosted a legislator during a site visit before to raise your hand. I'm going to ask if one of you can share why you did that. Why did you invite a legislator to your site? See if we get any volunteers. All right. Sarah, Sada, go for it.
Hi, everyone. So as a site coordinator, years ago, I hosted a legislative visit and I invited the representatives just because it helped us gain visibility. It was really good to have both the representative and their staffers come down just to see what we do on a day-to-day basis. I think oftentimes there is like a lot of different rhetoric when it comes to after school programs. And I think the one that we invited, she was very supportive, but I have heard amongst other legislators that they kind of view after school programs as like a glorified, like babysitting kind of unit. And so definitely having them down, watching program, watching our enrichment, really opened their eyes to what after school programs really could be.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it's Sada or Sarah?
Sarah, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing. So some of the things that you mentioned, right, we have up here on the slide. So it's really important, right, to gain visibility. We have 37 new legislators that joined during the last legislative season. And so that is a lot of new people that don't really have an understanding of what these programs look like, right? What the programs look like on a day-to-day basis. Really, what is the work that you all are doing? We all have an idea sort of in our heads what an after-school program is, but we don't really actually know what it's like, right? And so gaining visibility is really key, right? To have to invite a legislator so that they actually understand what happens every day during program. There's the piece around advocacy, right? So we want to make sure that our legislators understand what program looks like every day because they are our representatives. They're the ones that are going to be in spaces advocating for programs like ours, right? And so if they don't really know what they're advocating for, then they won't do it or they won't do it well, right? And so it's really important for us to make sure that we're supporting we're supporting them and getting this information and being able to advocate for us adequately, right? The way that we want. And of course, the community engagement, I would say the capacity building piece, right? It's so crucial, like what Ben was saying, right? It's like this idea of, oh, there are elected officials, like we don't interact with them on a daily basis, but actually we should, right? Because these are the folks that we have elected to represent us in our communities, right? And so it is really a great opportunity to have a legislator come and interact with your families, interact with your students, and demystify this idea that they're some beings that sit in an office and have nothing to do with you all. Like they are part of your community, right? And it's important for them to understand your community, right? So the community engagement piece is really key. And even I'll even say, like, even for legislators that have been around for a while, like what we've realized and what we've seen is that folks still don't have a clear understanding of what we do in out of school time programs, right? There's so many assumptions that are being made, right? And that is simply because they just don't know, right? And so if we can make these visits happen, then we can really expand the champions in the legislature that can really support our programs and do the things that you would like for them to do, right? Thanks so much. And I'm going to pass it on over to Ben again.
Cool. Thanks, Leslye. Yeah, love that overview. So let's get into a little bit of who exactly you should invite in your local community, because it can be a little overwhelming. You might not even know who your representatives are. As Leslye said, there's so much turnover in the state legislature this year. It's likely that you have a new assembly member or state senator. So let's get into who those folks are, who some of those folks are. So what inviting local representatives does is it builds support for your program, right? I always like to say when challenge is rolling around to folks who are a little bit nervous about meeting with legislators, you all are the experts on your program. And your programs are in their communities, and that's what they care about. They care about and they need to know what's happening in their communities on the ground, and that's what you all know. So you don't need to know necessarily, what the legislative calendar looks like or how a bill gets passed. But if you want to know, let me know. We can talk about it. But what you do know about is how your program runs, what your community needs, what your successes are, and be able to tell those stories. That's awesome. So that's what we're trying to do, is build support for your program with these local representatives, so that when they go back to Sacramento or to Congress or to the school board or wherever, they're keeping in mind, that program in my district is serving tons of families, but they really need extra help or extra resources. They're having staffing issues, right? So they're keeping that in mind as they're making those decisions. So members of Congress, state senators, state assembly members, all fantastic options, but they're not the only ones, right? So state representatives, they control most of the funding for expanded learning in California. So we talk a lot about state representatives, assembly members, and senators because of that fact, because they're in charge of so much of the funding for our programs, right? So we really want to show those folks why and how the programs are valuable in their community. But Sada also talked about inviting staff, which is hugely important too. Representatives, I mean, they are representing hundreds of thousands of people. They obviously can't be everywhere all at once, but the staff in your districts, in your program's district, those are the ones who are on the ground informing the representative what's happening, right? So inviting the elected official is awesome, and we really want them to attend, right, and see for themselves. But inviting their staff is super important too, right? Because they're going to communicate those needs back to their bosses, right? Also, the site visits help you build those relationships too. So these aren't just one-off conversations or site visits. Ideally, what you're doing is the site visit is just the catalyst, or sometimes the culmination of that relationship that you're building with your representative, right? So it starts off with a site visit, but then you have multiple touch points throughout the year with that representative, and they know what's happening in your community, in your program, and you're helping inform them when they have questions or need to make decisions specifically on education or expanded learning issues, right? So staff are super important. You also want to celebrate the benefits of after school and use the site visit as an opportunity to call for support, right? So here's what's going on. Here are the successes we're seeing with ELOP, for example, right? But here's where the implementation is challenging. We're having trouble, getting transportation for our students so they can come to the program, or we're having communication breakdowns with the school district, whatever the case may be, right? And then lastly, you want to, during the site visit, you want to connect what's happening in your community to your after school program, right? So if your school district is seeing chronic absence, right, chronic absenteeism in your program, we can talk about how your after school program can aid in bringing kids, getting them excited to come back to school, right? And we know that through the data that that's the case. So yeah, using site visit to build relationships is hugely important and goes a long way in getting legislators, local officials invested in your community. And I've been talking a lot about politicians, right, in their offices, but it's not just those folks. It's students and families, right, getting them bought into the program, right, which of course they know firsthand how valuable it is. It's educators and school personnel. So at your site visit, inviting teachers, inviting your principal, inviting classified staff, right? Business and community leaders. Who are the large voices in your community? Invite those folks to your program too. Media is huge. Getting this in the newspaper, getting articles written about it, even on local news is awesome. So we can talk a little bit about getting media there. And then local representatives too, like the mayor or city council members. So all great options for getting those to your site. But want to go back now to state representatives and talk about your representative. So what we're going to do now is spend a couple minutes, maybe 2 or 3, and we're going to find your local representative. So your state assembly member and state senator. So what I want everyone to do, oh, thanks, Leslye, for dropping that link, is you're going to click on the link that Leslye just sent and is also on the screen. You're going to go to the Find My Rep California specific website. You're going to type in your zip code and address. If you have it on hand, the address and zip code for your program, I think that might be even better. But if you don't, that's okay. Just go ahead and punch in your address and your zip code. And then what should pop up is your assembly member and your senator. And then just jot that down really quick, who the names are of those two folks. So everyone take a couple minutes to go ahead and do that.
I also want to add, we had redistricting happen, so it's possible that you may have more than one representative for the Senate or the Assembly.
Or no representatives, like happened to Sly a few months ago.
Yes, that is true too.
Let us know if that's the case, and we'll help you find someone. Anyone need extra time finding their rep? Looking in the chat. Okay. So while folks are wrapping that up, now that we have those names, cool, thanks, Elizabeth. Now that we have those names of folks, what we want to do is take a look at these legislative bios that Leslye and her CAN team have put together over the last couple of years. These are super helpful when we get into the challenge in March every year, but we're going to use them today too. These bios are breakdowns of key information and background on the legislators throughout the state. So 2 examples here on the screen. They're actually a married couple, Senator Dolly and Assemblymember Dolly. You can see it gives you their priorities, how long they've been in office, and then a quick bio about them. Reason that these are so useful, and we'll drop the bios in the chat. What I want you to do is find your rep. You can go Control F on your keyboard and then type in the name of either your senator. Actually, you should do both, your senator and your assembly member. Reason these are so valuable is because when you're reaching out to your elected official, when you go to make that connection, you'll have a little bit more information about who that person is and what their priorities are. So we talked about current events and tying back what's happening in your community to your after school program. You also want to use what's happening in your after school program to tie to the priorities of the legislator, right? So it just gives you a little more insight into what they're thinking about. Is it community safety? Is it education issues? Is it growing the economy? Is it college to career pipeline for students? All of those things, we can touch on all of those things in after school program. So that'll help you make that connection to the legislators when you go to have those conversations. Oh, cool. Thanks, Leslye. So if you click on that drive link, that should bring you to the assembly member and the senator bios. So you don't have to do it now, but just save that link for later and use it when you go to have your own site visits. Cool. Okay. So that was a lot of info, but bank it away. And okay, folks need access. We'll get that going for you. Bank that info away. Save your questions for the end, and we can talk about it more, or drop them in the chat, and we'll grab them as we see them. Cool. So I'm going to pass it back to Leslye now to talk a little bit about timing. When should we make this ask? When should we start reaching out?
Yes. Alrighty, and so we will work on getting you all access to that, to the bios, but in case we don't, we'll also make sure to send those to you after the presentation today. Alrighty, so when is an ideal time to reach out? So Sada mentioned earlier that they went ahead and invited their legislator. Sada, did you say when you had them go to your site?
I didn't, but it did follow. It was during like springtime when the budget revision opened for our California state budget.
Okay, now I'm going to put you on the spot some more. Why did you choose that time to invite your legislator?
We had already done a lot of legislative work through like Lights On, and during the like winter time when we would go to like their events. But we chose the springtime just because that's when the budget reopens, and then that is when California state legislators get to kind of look at that budget again. And it's kind of like their second chance to refund us and like refund our programs before they close, I believe in July.
Yeah, so that was a key time, right? So you all were strategic and you already had relationships established with your legislators, and then made sure to have them go to your site during a key time in the legislature, right? So here are some times, right, that are also really ideal. If you are new, right, and you don't have a relationship yet, fall and winter time is usually a good time to start those relationships. Like Ben mentioned, it can be much more like informal. So let's say that you reach out to your legislature and you're not able to get your actual rep there onto your site. Maybe a staffer will go in their place. Like that's still a really good opportunity to have them come by. And fall and winter time is ideal because they tend to be more flexible. There's really not much urgency going on in the legislative season. So Lights On. We've been talking about Lights On a lot, right? It's a really good opportunity. We all celebrate Lights On. Why not just add somebody to your RSVP list, right? Why not just invite your superintendent, your principal, right? Maybe not just your legislator, but you can invite anyone that you feel like is key, like Ben mentioned, right? Lights On is really ideal because everyone is already celebrating the importance of after-school programs, right? Summer Matters, those of you that support summer programs, right? There's a whole week that's dedicated to honoring summer programs. And so you can also use that as an opportunity to invite a legislator, a legislative rep to your program. However, we want to say that you can really invite them anytime. So let's say that you are hosting a carnival, you know, at a random time during the year. You can also choose, you know what, let's go ahead and reach out to our representatives and see if they may want to come out and join us and see our carnival that we're hosting with our students and our families that day, right? So really, when you're doing great like things and you're already putting all this work in, right, to have such a great time, like why not just add someone else to your RSVP list, right? All right, next slide. Okay, and so Ben mentioned our legislative calendar, right? And Sada talked about, right, the opportunity of getting a representative to visit their site during a key time. And that was before the budget revise, right? Which you can see here on this calendar was probably between you invited them, I'm assuming around April and May, right? Yeah. And so that was a very clear strategy that her organization and her group decided to take. And you can do that too. However, like I said, really, whenever you are doing something special in your program, or maybe when you're not doing something special and you just feel like I have the time right now to coordinate something where I believe like a representative can come and just see our program, then really you can make it happen. And you can see here too, like I mentioned before, during the fall, winter time is more quiet, right? So it is a good opportunity. You have like higher chances of your representative coming through, especially if you don't have an established relationship with them yet. Next slide. All right. Now, how do you do that? How do you reach out to your representative? So you would email their scheduler. Each office has a staff of folks that are working on supporting the calendars of our representatives. And so you would go ahead and email them. We'd recommend that you would do it in advance so that you can make sure to follow up as the time gets closer. And this is really key, like following up, because like Ben mentioned, folks are super busy, right? And so it is really important to make sure that you're actively following up, making sure that they can potentially join you for this visit. And I also want to say that if you have a hard time finding the information of the scheduler of your representative, you can also utilize us as resources, right? So Ben is part of CA3, and CA3 can totally help you find like who would be the ideal person to contact. And then like I mentioned before, if a legislative aide can come, but not your legislator, this is still a win, right? It's still a win to expose as many folks to our programs as possible, right? And next slide. All right. And then Ben's going to talk to us about what it could look like on site visit day.
Cool. Thanks, Leslye. I was also just going to drop in the sample invite language from AfterSchool Alliance. This website in general just has a ton of great info, some of which we'll talk about right now. But feel free to use that sample invitation if it's helpful for you to, once you find the scheduler's email, to reach out to them. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's site visit day. So we did it, we planned it, we have VIPs coming, and now it's day of. So let's talk a little bit about what that'll look like. The first thing you're going to want to do is have your guests sign in. So once they arrive to your site visit location, have everyone sign in so that you can keep track of who showed up, which office or organization they're from, and then you'll be able to use that list to follow up with them after, share resources, and so on, and then just get a good head count of who you should follow up with. Key note here, have a separate sign-in table for media personnel so you can do different types of interaction with those folks and keep track of who is there specifically to share news and record the event in a different way. Next, you're going to want to hand out materials. So you'll probably want to have an agenda for the day. And on the next screen, I'll show you what that looks like. But you'll want to have an agenda, some program information, if it's useful. And that's, at that point, you'll hand out your materials to your guests as they come in. And then lastly, greet your VIPs. So if you have the mayor coming, or if you have an assembly member or senator coming, obviously treat everyone who is coming to visit your site with respect and make sure they know where they're going. But keep track of, if you know that a quote unquote VIP is coming, welcome them, make sure that they know where they're going, and make sure that if they have questions throughout the day that they're getting answered. Yeah, okay, so on the next page, you'll see a sample invitation or agenda here. This was actually a site visit that we did at Davis Joint Unified up in Davis, California last summer. Awesome event. As you can see here, it's broken down really cleanly with an opening presentation at Emerson Junior High in the morning. And then it goes and visits 3 separate programs. So we had an ethnic studies class that we saw, a robotics class, which was really cool, and then a summer art camp in the afternoon. So that was 3 different sites, all of which were really close together, but we did have to travel to each one. So you'll think about that in your logistics, how much you want folks to travel to different sites. If you want to keep everything just kind of centralized, usually a good idea to visit a couple different ones, but just keep in mind that the travel for folks. This one was pretty easy because they were all kind of like right around the corner from each other, but that'll definitely be a logistical hurdle that you just have to think about if folks are having to get in their cars or walk to a different campus location, especially if your community is really spread out. It might be something you consider. But yeah, you can see here that it's broken down with an opening presentation, visiting 3 sites. And then at that last site, we kind of had a time where everyone on the site visit came together and discussed some closing thoughts, reflections, questions. And then at each of these programs, throughout, as we were walking around seeing what the kids were up to, folks were asking questions. They're asking questions to the kids, they're asking questions to the site leaders, to the program staff. So that's kind of what the flow will look like. And this is just an idea, just a sample. You don't have to use this one, obviously, but gives you an idea of what the day could look like. Usually site visits are 2 to 3 hours long, no more than that. But you'll definitely want to open up with some type of welcome for folks, give them an overview of what you'll be talking about, why it's important that they're here today, what you really want them to pay attention to, then let them go see what's happening with the kids at the site, and so on. So some more day of tips. Review the talking points that you want to make sure that you highlight for folks. So that program data that's really important to you, right? Demographic data of the students, what is super successful about your program, right? Any highlights, any data, any key points you want to share, make sure that those are readily available for you as folks are walking around asking questions in your opening presentation and so on. If you're hosting in the fall, you know, as you all know, probably in California, we like to keep it hot late into the year. So if you're hosting a site visit in the next month or 2, it might be really warm. So having bottles of water is always a really good idea, especially if folks are going to be walking around quite a bit. Signage is also really helpful. If you can reserve parking spots at your site, at your school, that's great. If not, just make it really easy for folks to park, get from point A to point B, put up walking signs for them, maybe have folks standing outside to flag them down if they're there for the site visit, and so on. Next, celebrate your staff. A site visit is a lot of work, as you can probably tell from this, and a lot of you have already hosted one, I'm sure. But celebrate your staff, thank them for all their hard work, and be proud of yourself and your team for hosting this, right? Because it's going to do a lot for your community and for your program. Just getting that ball rolling, building that relationship, having a legislator and or their staff come out to your site visit, super important. It's a big lift, so make sure you take a moment to celebrate yourself and your team. And then lastly, utilize the After School Alliance resources. They're the ones who host the Lights On After School event every year, kind of do the national Lights On, and then California gets more specific on our end here. But utilize those resources. I'll drop the link to the kind of main Lights On page, but tons of great helpful information there, including that sample invite that I shared. You can also check out other resources on getting a proclamation in your city, having your city declare, Lights On After School Day, just helping you plan from the start to the end your site visit generally. A lot of helpful resources there. Yeah, so that's the day of. Want to leave time for questions that folks have. So Leslye and I can hang out and answer any questions that you all have. Leslye, is there anything that I didn't touch on that you wish I would have or that you'd like to add?
No, I think you got it all. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So folks, feel free to raise your hand. We'll go back in the gallery. Come off chat. And let us know, yeah, what's on your mind, what's overwhelming you, what do you want to dig into more? Let us know. Are you so excited to host a legislator that you can't even speak right now? Yeah, that's what I thought.
I have a question, Ben.
Yeah.
I remember during the challenge back in March when I did some legislative visits, when we were scheduling them, some of the aides were asking for specific information to bring to the visits. I'm trying to remember the specifics, but they were asking something like how many sites in the district are funded this way, or something about funding. Is there any info that we should have readily available for the legislative aides or the reps if they come to our sites?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sly. I'm glad you brought that up. Information on how much your school district is receiving in expanded learning funds, specifically ELOP, is going to be a really helpful stat to have. I'll pull up the link for that for folks to look at it if you all don't already know what your funding situation is in your school district. But that is a great thing to have, is how much funding your school district in your community gets from ELOP. That's a great stat. Generally, if there's, just to kind of take a step back, if there's a question that folks ask you during the site visit that you don't have the answer to, always an okay idea to say, let me follow up with you on that. And that's a great question. I'll get back to you, but make sure you jot that down and to follow up with them. But yeah, good question, Sly. Let me find that that funding information. I think it's on the CDE website. Maybe it's even on CAN's website.
We could also send it with the recording later if we can't pull it up right now. No biggie.
Cool. Oh, Mariana, I see your chat here. Yeah, this presentation is being recorded. And yeah, we'll share it with folks so you can share it with your site coordinators.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Good question.
All right. Is there any maybe fear that's coming up? Is anyone scared to do something like this? And that's totally okay. All right, we got a fearless group in here. That's great, because you really, there really shouldn't be fear. Like, it's normal to be a little nervous to do something like this, but you all are doing amazing work every day. It's just about asking someone to come visit so that your program can be seen. And then this person has the ability to then advocate for you and your community.
Mm-hmm. Gladys, did you have something? Saw you come off mute.
Oh gosh, I'm not muted. I'm like, wait.
Oh.
No, I saw that you guys mentioned something that the PowerPoint might be posted. I wanted to share with our site coordinators. Where can we find the actual PowerPoint? Or are you guys going to be emailing it out?
Yeah, so we'll probably share all of the resources, including the slide deck after the presentation. And then we'll see if we can also have it posted so that you all can utilize it as a resource for your site.
Well, actually, I do have maybe a question. I have 11 sites that I oversee. And so I was thinking maybe I can, we told them, I was like, we're going to select one of you guys' sites so we can do a visit, so we can invite. But how would, I'm trying to see, what would the selection process be, I guess, for my team? Like, what would I base it off of? Like maybe what they want to showcase, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I would say think about, what are some great things, maybe check in with your staff and see who has capacity to host someone, especially if you have youth leaders in your programs, right? they are a great resource, right, to being able to support a visit. So thinking about that, and then of course, like seeing, which site makes sense to visit this year. Maybe you'll do what Ben had shown as an example. Maybe you'll have folks be able to visit multiple sites if they're close together. So it's really about what strategy you wanna have.
Yeah, thank you, Leslye.
You're welcome. Jordan, did I say your name correctly? You had your name up.
Yeah. My question was like, I wouldn't be scared to have a legislator come out to my site, but how do I motivate? Like, how would you, or what's the tip to motivate my staff? Like, they'll do the work, but if someone shows up, they're instantly like, oh my God, what do I do? And they'll have this fear. Like when I go out to do site visits now, they think I'm there to be like, gotcha moment. So how do I like convey to them like this is a good opportunity? This can shed light on the community so that if someone does show up, they're not shaking in their boots trying to figure out what to do with that person.
I think Leslie's going to have a great answer to this just because she was on the ground actually as a site staff. But in my mind, I think what's super empowering is when someone knows that they're the expert in something, right? So your staff knows their site, their program, their kids, their families better than any of us on this call, definitely better than the legislators that are representing them. So not that it has to be a power struggle necessarily, but empowering them and telling them the legislators are there to learn from you what's happening in their community at your site. And because they don't know, it's not a quiz. They're not coming to like audit you, right? Or check to make sure that you're doing something right or something wrong. They want to see, they are looking for success stories. They want to go back to Sacramento and brag about how awesome that the program is in their district, right? So empowering your staff and telling them, you all know how awesome your kids are, what the cool things about your program is. Show them that. Just show them what's going on in your community so that they can go back and make good decisions for kids and families. So kind of that empowerment aspect is one thing I would suggest.
Yeah, and I would just add that it's not a punitive thing, right? Like we all just want to make sure that that our families are seen, that our programs are seen, right? And just making it clear, like Ben said, folks don't really know what's happening. So this is an opportunity for the staff as experts to showcase the work that they're doing. So it really is a really great opportunity to engage your whole program also in creating like a really neat event.
I would
And
also.
sorry.
No,
I wanted
go
to
ahead,
also
Leslye.
say, like, I'm sure that there's other folks in the space right now that can probably give some tips and pointers that have done this recently.
I just wanted to add, find out what your staff is motivated by. Some people are motivated by money, and you can make the case that, hey, look, if they come and see our program, they can give us more funding. We can give you all raises. We can have more resources, more supplies. Others are motivated by professional growth. You can let them know that, hey, you know what, you can put on your resume that you co-hosted a state senator or the office of so-and-so. And then like, oh, wow, I want to put that on my resume that I hosted a legislative visit. So it depends on what your staff is motivated by. Find an applicable angle to use it as a carrot.
Go for it, Kendra.
Kind of on the similar line with staff, I wonder if do you all have any like training or support resources that will help them with also like staying on track? Because I know a lot of the times we have people who may be very new to working in education or with kids, talking to legislators. So I think One of the things that I have a little bit of a worry about is just filters and it not just turning into like a complaint or, kind of guiding their conversation. Are there any resources out there for that?
We have a handout that we use for the challenge. It's called How to Tell Your Story. We use this with youth particularly, but also with adults. And it basically walks them through how do you tell your story so that you identify a need in your community. You talk about how your after school program is helping meet that need, and then why it's important to then get more support so that after school programs like X, Y, and Z can continue to thrive. So we can send that as part of the resources list, so that you can take that handout, you can tweak it, adapt it, and very easily use it with your staff as well. That's one thing off the top of my head.
And also just jumping in and helping to create a plan and then a timeline, right? And then you can just kind of, there's actually a checklist that we'll also share. I think that we just need to revise it a little bit, but we'll be sharing a checklist that you can take a look at, and maybe both you and your site leads can see, okay, where are we in our plan? So that it's more tangible, because we do know, right? Site leads are overwhelmed. There's a lot going on day to day, right? And so whatever support can be created for them will make it so that this is more successful, right?
Cool. Great questions, y'all. Feel free to drop more in the chat if they come up, and then we'll leave our emails too in case you think of something after or want to chat more. But before we end, just want to plug the upcoming challenge workshops again, as Sly mentioned at the beginning, in case you missed it. Sly, do you want to say more about it? Don't want to steal your thunder.
No, yeah, just check them out. We want to see you again, and just make sure you're set up for success. And these workshop topics were based on your recommendations and your feedback. So if there's something that is missing, if there's something that maybe is not being addressed in the webinars, we might be able to squeeze another one in, or we might be able to incorporate content into an existing webinar. If maybe you wanted to find out more about a very specific topic, just let us know, put that in the eval, or just shoot me an email, and then we'll make sure that we incorporate that, because we're doing these all the way through March and beyond. So we have the ability to add another webinar to address, by popular demand, a topic that maybe everybody's thinking of that maybe we didn't consider because I had a blind spot about that. Just let us know.